Ashley Bryan, and today I would like to show you how I make a piece of solder jewelry using a vintage hanky, and hopefully the final project will end up something like this. I'm going to use the hanky that my husband's grandmother's sister-in-law sent to me. She has had me make several pieces of jewelry for her out of her vintage hankies, and a lot of them, she said, were given to her by her mother or her grandmother. She sent me this letter back in August, so today we're gonna finally get this made for her. In order to make this today, we are going to need copper tape, our pieces of glass, sal ammoniac block, CJ's flux remover, a little bit of steel wool, your lead-free solder, flux, alcohol, and finally, finishing compound. First, what I like to do is arrange my piece of glass on the hanky to try to find where the best place, the best picture, the best design. Then I'll take my pen and I'll hold my glass down and just make little dots. If I try to drag my pen, it'll drag the fabric and I'll kind of lose my spot. Then I'll be able to cut the piece out. And as I'm cutting, I just try to make sure this is a really thin fabric. Once I'm finished cutting, I'll hold it up to my piece of glass just to make sure there's nothing that overhangs a little bit. And I do see a part on the corner that I want to trim. If you end up having a little bit of overhang, it will stick to your copper tape when you're taping, and it might make the fabric pucker a little. Once I have it between the two pieces of glass, now it is time to add the copper tape. First, I am wrapping the copper tape around so I can cut it to exactly the size that I need. And I will only take just the backing off of one end. Then I'll make sure it's centered and even. And while holding my two pieces of glass with the hanky in the middle, I just wrap this tape right around the piece. As I am pressing the copper tape down onto the piece of glass, I love the way this burnishing tool can help me when I'm trying to get the corners flattened after they connect. And then flip it on the back and do the same. Now that I've got the edges just how I want them, they're all smooth, the corners are down, I'm ready for the next step. So we found our hanky, we have got the design all cut out, we've applied our copper tape, and now it's time to solder. I've turned my soldering iron on, it's all heated up and ready to go. I'm gonna put my mask on because I need to tin the tip. When I first put the soldering iron on, it's gonna smoke a little bit when I do that. Now you can see the tip is nice and smooth and shiny. It's cleaned off any of the dirt or any particles that are on there. And now I'm ready to solder. It's always a constant balance between applying the flux, tinning the tip of your soldering iron. It's a constant thing, and that's what took me so long to get used to. I've trimmed a piece of solder off of the roll, and now I'll hold it up to the tip. What we're doing first is just a layer, a small layer of solder. The flux allows the solder to move around the piece. At this point, I will grab a pair of pliers and hold the piece so I can really get to all the different edges. I'm also gonna reapply my flux so my solder will move. I need to make sure to get all the sides and the back as well. And just applying the heat will help the solder move. I've already cut little pieces of the solder, so I'm just using the tip to pick up a little bit at a time to build the solder onto the pendant. And just waving it over to get a nice, smooth, even coat. Continue to coat the piece and keep building the solder up. Readjusting my clamp as I need to. At this point, I'm just smoothing all the edges out. Now that I've finished getting all the solder on my piece of jewelry, I am ready to let it cool for a few minutes. Our piece is cooled, so what we're gonna do now is use a flux remover. I'm gonna shake it up a little bit, and what this is gonna do, it's gonna remove all the flux that gets burned. You can kind of see there's a lot of black marks, and those happen just when the flux comes into contact with the soldering iron. At this point, I'll also grab my burnishing tool again and go over these edges now that they're freshly soldered. Sometimes a little bit of the adhesive from the back of the copper tape will collect in the corners, and this kind of helps to make sure all your edges are down. And it also helps me to clean that piece up. Now that our piece is clean, we've removed all the flux and we have used the steel wool to rub out any cloudy spots. We have to figure out how to hang this. So we're going to add a couple of jump rings. I want to add 2 jump rings to the top. So I apply my flux where I want those jump rings to go, and then apply the flux to my jump ring as well. Grab up a few little bits of solder and heat up the spot where I want that jump ring to go. And then smooth out my solder. Clean this up and then just bend it with my pliers after it's cooled. Just at the end of this step, I like to go ahead and clean my piece off first, and then I just will finish it up and polish it up after those little jump rings are in place. I'm gonna straighten these jump rings. They're a little more even. So now that we have our piece completely clean, we've done the steel wool, we have removed all the flux, and now it is time for the finishing compound. And what this will do is keep your piece from tarnishing over time, and it will help the piece just really polish up nicely and be bright and silver and shiny. Once the finishing compound is applied, we'll let it sit and dry for a few minutes and then we'll buff our piece. Now, I am buffing the piece. The finishing compound has been applied, and this will really keep our piece nice and shiny over time. As you're buffing this piece, you can really see that it has taken off a lot of that finishing compound and is really buffing and shining this piece right up. Buffed out all of the finishing compound. We have our beautiful pendant. Now we're ready to add the chain. So now we are feeding our chain through the 2 jump rings that we've made through the top. So our pendant will hang on this nice 18-inch silver chain. Add our final jump ring so this can be clasped together. Now our piece is complete. I really hope that you've enjoyed this demonstration today. I have had a lot of fun getting to show you my techniques and little tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. I am excited to show at the Center for Art Education. Thank you so much for watching this video.